Have you ever noticed that in almost every classroom, there's one student who always sits alone? Not the loud one, not the popular one surrounded by laughter, the quiet one. They walk into class, take the same seat every day, open their notebook, and rarely say a word unless the teacher calls on them. When the bell rings, they pack their things quickly and leave before the crowd even starts moving. At lunch, they sit by themselves. During group projects, they're the last one picked. And when the teacher says, "Find a partner," there's always that one awkward moment where everyone already has someone, except them. Most people look at that student and assume one thing: they must be lonely. But psychology suggests something much more interesting, because the truth is, students who have no friends in school aren't always rejected. Sometimes they simply experience the social world very differently from everyone else. And today, we're breaking down the psychology behind students who seem to have no friends in school, the ones people often misunderstand the most. First, let's talk about something psychologists call social energy. Think of your mind like a battery. Some people recharge when they're around others. Conversations, jokes, and group activities actually give them energy. These students are often the ones who love group discussions, school events, and hanging out after class. But for others, every social interaction slowly drains their battery. Even friendly conversations can feel exhausting. The noise of the cafeteria, the pressure to keep conversations going, the constant social expectations, it can all become overwhelming. So while some students feel energized by being around people, others feel relief when they're finally alone. For them, sitting quietly in class isn't a problem, it's peace. But that's only part of the story. Here's where things get interesting. Many students who spend a lot of time alone are also deep observers. While everyone else is busy talking, they're watching. They notice the subtle things most people miss. Who seems genuinely happy? Who's pretending to laugh? Which friendships are real and which ones are just convenience? Psychologists sometimes refer to this as high social awareness. When you become very aware of social behavior, you start realizing that not every friendship is meaningful. Some are temporary, some are based on popularity. Some exist only because people see each other every day. And for certain students, shallow friendships feel uncomfortable. They would rather have one genuine connection than 10 casual ones. So if they don't find that connection, they often choose to remain alone rather than forcing relationships that don't feel real. But there's another reason some students appear friendless. Their minds simply operate at a different pace. In many classrooms, conversations move quickly. People respond instantly, jokes happen rapidly, and opinions are shared without much thought. But some students process things more slowly and deeply. They think before speaking. They analyze situations before reacting. By the time they've formed their response, the conversation may have already moved on. Over time, this can make them appear quiet or distant, even though their mind is actually very active. And here's something psychology has discovered that might surprise you. People who spend more time alone often develop stronger self-reflection. When you're constantly surrounded by friends, your attention is focused outward: conversations, group dynamics, other people's opinions. But when you spend time alone, your attention turns inward. You begin asking deeper questions. What do I really want in life? Why do people behave the way they do? What kind of person do I want to become? This kind of thinking builds something psychologists call introspection, the ability to understand your own thoughts and emotions. And interestingly, many writers, scientists, and innovators were once students who spent long periods of time alone, because solitude gives the brain something rare: space to think. But of course, not every student without friends chooses solitude. Sometimes the situation is more complicated. Some students isolate themselves because of past experiences. Maybe they tried to join groups before and felt ignored. Maybe they were teased or excluded earlier in school. Or maybe they simply felt like they never fit in with the people around them. Over time, the brain learns something psychologists call social avoidance. If reaching out repeatedly leads to uncomfortable experiences, the brain starts protecting itself. It begins to think maybe it's safer not to try. So the student stops approaching groups, stops joining conversations, stops expecting anyone to notice them. From the outside, it may look like they prefer being alone, but inside, part of them may still hope that someone will simply sit next to them and start a conversation. And this is why the psychology of students with no friends is so misunderstood. Because from the outside, two completely different experiences can look exactly the same. One is peaceful solitude, a student who genuinely enjoys independence, thinking deeply, and spending time in their own world. The other is silent isolation, a student who feels invisible but has learned to hide it. And unless you actually talk to them, you'll never know which one it is. But here's something important to remember. Having no friends in school does not mean someone will struggle socially forever. In fact, many people who felt out of place in school later find their community in completely different environments: universities, workplaces, creative communities, or online spaces where people share the same interests. Because the world outside school is much bigger than one classroom. And sometimes the quiet students, the ones who seemed invisible, are simply waiting to meet people who think the way they do. So the next time you notice a student sitting alone in class, remember this: they might be lonely, or they might simply have a rich inner world, observing everything while everyone else is busy talking. Because in psychology, silence doesn't always mean emptiness. Sometimes it means depth. And if you were the student who had no friends in school, you might already understand something many people learn much later in life. Being alone doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it simply means you're different from the crowd. And sometimes different people are the ones who end up seeing the world in ways everyone else misses. So tell me something. Were you the student surrounded by friends in school, or the one who mostly sat alone?